What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the True Sports NBA Draft, a special edition of, if you want to call it a run, we have our college basketball expert here, Nolan Kangas. He's an expert. You're an expert at college basketball here at True Sports TV, man.
Expert's kind of a bold stand there, but I know the game a little bit here and there.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is the NCAA or college basketball in general meeting the NBA, and I think both of our skill set or our expertise kind of suits doing this thing together. So I figured, why not we kind of combine our brains into this effort. Regardless, we're going to go through the lottery draft, the top 14 picks, and then maybe some of our sleeper candidates later down the road. Let's just jump right into it. All right. Minnesota has the number one pick. Nolan, you are on the clock. I can go back and tell you what I would do, but I'll let you make your decision here. Minnesota, what are you going to do?
Okay. So initially thinking, if I'm Minnesota, I'm trading the pick, because I think there's so many other teams that want to jump up and grab that number one player. For me, the number one player is Anthony Edwards. For a lot of other people, it's LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't like the fit there with LaMelo Ball and D'Angelo Russell in the backcourt. Maybe it can work here and there, but I do think regardless, unless they trade that pick, I just don't think it makes much sense taking Anthony Edwards. They're just already loaded at the guard position. We don't know what's going to happen with Malik Beasley. Obviously, what's happening with him this offseason. But for this specific pick, number one, let's say they don't trade it, I do think they take LaMelo Ball. I think there's so many questions surrounding Ball. I think offensively he's terrific. The shot, is it there yet? We don't really know. Really inefficient. We haven't seen a passer like him in a long, long time, and a passer who's so quick under the basket as well with good moves. Like, we know Ben, and I'm a Ben Simmons guy. We know he can pass the ball really well, but with these quick moves, spin moves all around under the court, and he fits where the NBA is going. But defensively, he's a nightmare.
He's garbage, yeah.
And that's the question mark for me. This isn't a good defensive team. D'Angelo Russell isn't a good defender. And if you bring in LaMelo Ball, is he going to try on defense? It's a question mark. But that's who I would have slated at the number one pick.
I actually agree with pretty much everything you say here. I do think that in the end of the day, Minnesota's probably going to trade this pick. I don't know for what. Maybe it could be a Drew Holiday. Maybe, the Celtics are completely active right now with Gordon Hayward and those 3 picks in the first round. There's tons of options for Minnesota to go out there and trade this pick. Will they end up doing it? It's highly likely. I actually think this is probably one of those drafts where maybe the number 1 and the number 2 pick get traded, which I think has to be a first in history. But regardless, I would say LaMelo as well, man. I would say LaMelo Ball is the choice for them as well. I just think at the end of the day, he is the best player in this draft. You have to pick the best player when it comes to the first overall pick, regardless of fit. And I think it just works out for them. Look, the defensive stuff is something that's a huge issue for LaMelo, but it's not to say he doesn't have the tools there to become a good defender. He's tall, he has long hands, and he has length that could potentially bother players off ball. So I think the size and the ability is there. He just needs to gain a little bit of weight and kind of stop being lazy. He kind of developed a lazy attitude in the Illawarra Hawks. So I would go with LaMelo as well, man. So I'm kind of surprised that we're on the same note here already.
But with Ball, and you've mentioned this so many times on your social media, he's so boom or bust. I think he has the highest ceiling of any player in this class, but then there's that chance of, well, he's not going to put the effort in. And he's used to winning, even though he wasn't winning in the NBL, but he's been used to winning his whole entire youth career. Goes into Minnesota, they're not winning right away. Oh, is he going to get tired of it and want to be traded?
And who's another player that resembles? Andrew Wiggins, right? Wiggins is a guy who was kind of catered to throughout his career, his college career, his high school career. And LaMelo, in a lot of ways, is the same way. He goes to Minnesota, doesn't develop, goes into a losing culture, and now it's kind of the stigma of Wiggins can never be a good basketball player or be the great basketball player that people thought he was going to be. So I think LaMelo is kind of in the same boat there.
Completely agree. Now, number 2, this is bizarre where a team's going to be competing for an NBA championship next year.
Yeah.
I think they're going to move back as well. But what do you have the Warriors doing here at the number 2 slot?
I think they really have, like, they have so many options right now. And the big reason is because they own Minnesota's 2021 first round draft pick. They could give this up and still have another segue into the future next season or next draft in a better draft, a more talented draft too. So I actually think they do end up trading this pick, even if it's just for a bunch of scraps, maybe some role players, maybe a mid-level exception kind of guy. I know LaMarcus Aldridge was a guy that was floated around. I could see that potentially happening. He's a free agent next year, and they could just let him go. They could kind of have him on a waiver type of situation. The Warriors are in an extraordinary situation, kind of like how the Spurs were in 1999, because they had David Robinson. They had this core that could have competed for an NBA championship, but Robinson went down the season beforehand. They draft Tim Duncan, and now they have these two perennial stars that lead them into the next generation. 10 years later, what happened? Duncan, Ginobili, Parker are getting older. They have a pick, and they take Kawhi Leonard, and he kind of moves them into the next generation as well. So I think this pick is a good choice for them to kind of segue into the future with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green getting older. And this future, in my opinion, is probably James Wiseman. I was on the boat between him and Onyeka. It could have been Onyeka. I'm a big fan of Onyeka Okongwu, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think Wiseman has the higher ceiling to be a superstar in this league. A lot of people compare him to a Joel Embiid. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true. He has the motor, he has the athleticism. We just haven't seen him play enough to know. I think he is going to be a good player. I think there's not going to be a lot of pressure on him in Golden State to be able to do something crazy in his first year, and he can kind of be a plug-and-play guy automatically. But realistically, the Warriors are probably trading this pick.
Yeah.
With all that being said, yeah, they're trading this pick.
I'm with you there. I think they are going to trade it, but all signs do point to, if they were to take a player at number 2, it would be Wiseman, and that's who I would have had them taking as well. But you're right. We haven't seen too much playing time with Wiseman. Obviously, a very bizarre career there at Memphis where he had to leave. He put up terrific numbers, again, against pretty crap competition. The only question mark, and this is one of the negatives I had with him, and I don't know whether he just thought that, he's been the number 1 player his whole entire life. He took so many contested fadeaway shots for a 7-1 player. And that's something, I hate to see. I know you hate to see when Embiid does that. And sometimes he's really good at it. But you want to see him bully players in the paint more because they can't stop him. So for me, whether he does it in the NBA, and if he goes to a team like the Warriors who are going to coach him up to be that way, that'd be terrific. Yeah. But I still think he has a really high ceiling. Some scouts are, up here with him. Some are way down on him because of some of the question marks. I still think he's going to be a really talented NBA player.
It's such a weird draft because you could go through every player in the top 5 and say, he has the range to be a superstar, or he has the range to be one of the biggest busts we've seen in the league, whether it be LaMelo, whether it be James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards. Like, all 3 of those guys, they have extreme amounts of potential. It's just that, 1, we haven't seen it, and 2, it's it has to be perfect place, perfect time for all 3 of them. All right, number 3, good sir. We're at the Charlotte Hornets. Take your pick for the Hornets franchise.
It's completely obvious. I'm going in Onyeka Okongwu, and you love him. I love him.
Yeah.
The Hornets need a center. Clearly, Cody Zeller hasn't worked out for them, and they have pieces at sort of every other position. Whether Devontae Graham's a future there. Terry Rozier, none of us really like that contract, but he actually wasn't too bad this season. There's been talks of them maybe making a trade for Russell Westbrook. I think that would be a disaster. But Okongwu. And I don't really like making player comparisons, but the way he plays is like Bam Adebayo. And obviously, I hate to put that pressure on him, but that's what, scouts love. They love this guy who works his butt off every single play on offense, on defense. What is Bam not really great at? Shooting. What is Okongwu not really great at? Shooting. I don't know. All over the place, these guys look like the same player. I love his game, and I think he would be perfect for the Hornets.
I think it's like Onyeka is kind of if you combine Bam and Clint Capella in the same body, because he has the long arms, he has the athletic ability, he's the vertical threat that Capella is, but then he has the awareness, the motor, everything that you like out of Bam Adebayo, and he actually has a pretty good touch as a passer as well. He's not that bad of a passer as a big guy. I think this is a perfect pick for the Hornets. Like it's either Wiseman or Onyeka for them, but if I were them, I would go with Onyeka over James Wiseman, for the same reason you said, they pretty much have all their other positions locked down, whether it's Miles Bridges at small forward, PJ Washington, who had a really underrated year last year with the Hornets, and then you have Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier. That's kind of a fun budding team in the Eastern Conference if you add Onyeka in there. I could see them being, not a fringe playoff team for the next couple of years in developing and growing. It's just about, like, do you like that team? Do you like that Hornets team? And does Onyeka move you forward? Does it change does it increase the likelihood of them making it to the playoffs?
No, not necessarily. I think they have to get off the Batum contract and figure that whole situation out. But I love Okongwu. Miles Bridges has to take another leap for me. Devontae Graham, I like him a lot. Good shooter, obviously. Like he deserved to win Most Improved Player. Okay, maybe that's a bolder take, but I think he deserves to get more recognition, at least for Most Improved Player. PJ Washington, I think he's going to take another leap this year. This is the center pick they make that is going to fit. Zeller didn't work. Kaminsky didn't work. This is finally going to be the one, I think. And he just brings so many elements on both ends of the floor. I think, obviously, it's going to come down to, Rozier, if he can take a leap, Graham, if he gets a little bit better. You almost need to see a leap from Miles Bridges where he gets into that 21 points per game category. I don't think that's going to hit yet. But I like what you mentioned. I think they could be a fringe playoff team. And I think it would be interesting because they've been kind of stuck for a long time. And then obviously Kemba leaves. And we thought they were going to be terrible. And some players stepped up, but I think Okongwu would fit really well there. Now, Chicago, they have been in a lot of talks of moving up to number one, right? Yeah. And they've got some really good young talent there. They have a player in Zach LaVine who some people are really high on, some people are not so much. We know he can score the ball. But the Chicago Bulls, what do you think they'll do here at number 4?
Look, I feel like this is too far for Anthony Edwards to drop. If you're the Bulls and you can't find a trade to move up, and you're in this position where LaMelo is taken, James Wiseman is taken, and Onyeka is taken, and you don't necessarily need another big, I think Anthony Edwards is the choice here. He's a shooting guard, but he has the size and ability a little bit to play like an undersized small forward. I think he has the scoring touch. Although I would say a lot of the Chicago Bulls have that scoring touch, whether it be Kobe White, whether it be Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen. They would be an offensive juggernaut if Anthony Edwards was there and he kind of lived up to his potential. I think it's he's too good of a player to miss out on. If you're the Chicago Bulls. So you got to take Anthony Edwards or else you might kind of end up regretting it. And I think Billy Donovan is kind of a good coach for Edwards to fix that motor because I know he's that type of guy that can push players. And we saw that with Oklahoma City. I think this is kind of the right fit for him too to develop properly as well.
And I love Edwards' game. Like I've been saying, a lot of people are high on him. Some people, don't really see it. Yeah. There was the times in Maui where he just took over the games. He had that killer mentality. Sort of what D'Angelo Russell, and not to compare the players, but what Russell had in the college game, which was get me the ball, get out of the way, I'm going to score. Yeah. And there was a few times where Edwards could do that. And then there was a game against Michigan State where he looked like a superstar. I think he had 37 points, bounce passes from half court. He was ridiculous in that game. So he has that star potential. He has a perfect NBA body. Can he play that, the 3 position there with LaVine, with White? And you're right, it is a lot of scorers and not a lot of creators there. So I think maybe you'd have to ask Kobe White to start saying, hey, you got to move the ball a little bit more. We know you can shoot it. He had a solid rookie year as well, but Chicago's going to have some questions to answer as well with Lauri Markkanen or Wendell Carter Jr. and which player they're going to move forward with, because I think that is a question mark as well. But you're right. I just couldn't see Edwards falling out of the top 4. It would just be shocking.
And I could see them trading this pick just as much as any other team we've mentioned so far. I mean, top 4, even all the way up to maybe top 10, you could see any of these teams trading their pick. So it's such an interesting draft because you could see so much movement it's kind of unparalleled to any other NBA draft. So both of us went with Edwards, I'm guessing here.
Yeah.
Cleveland. This is kind of a strange pick. It's like, God, what is Cleveland going to do there? They have to give up Kevin Love. Andre Drummond is going to be cashing out for some money. And, they have Sexton. They have Darius Garland, who they believe is the future of their franchise. That's up to debate. Who's your pick for the Cavs?
This might be the toughest for me because there's a lot of players that would kind of fit well. You can't really go guard here because if they believe that Garland and Sexton is the future of that team, there's no
Yeah.
sense in, going guard. They need a defender. And there is a lot of good defenders in this class, but a lot of these defenders are somewhat more projects. So I'm going to go it's tough to, leave a player like this and let him go down. But on my big board, he's number 10. But I think he's purely the best one-on-one defender in this class, and that's Isaac Okoro from.
Hey, same pick.
Yeah, so I don't know, and his shooting is not good at all, and he needs to improve that. The only thing is he's coming into a situation. Yes, they'll probably move Kevin Love, whether that's at the trade deadline. We'll figure that out. You're going into a situation where you don't have to be the number one scorer because you have Sexton there. You don't have to be the number two scorer even because you have Darius Garland there. So if you can come in and just try and shut down the number one player, that's all they'll ask for you. And I know it's a big ask, but that's what he was the best at in the SEC. So I think that would be my pick there. Again, a young player as well. He will develop that scoring ability eventually. It's tough to go any other route here. But I can't go guard, even though there's some really good guards left on the board here. I love Obi Toppin. He can't play defense, and this is for a team that sucks on defense. So I think it just makes sense to go the best defender.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, there might be a slight chance they could take Denny. Maybe a slight chance that I could totally see that happening, but I think Denny is a lot more of a project than Isaac is. And then defensively, what Okoro brings to the team would be insurmountable compared to what Denny could bring to the team next season. He's an incredible defender. Defensively, he has that Kawhi Leonard archetype. Not offensively, not even close. But defensively, he has the archetype. He's a long defender. He's incredibly aware. He has incredible IQ, and it kind of, if you suit him in right next to those guys who are terrible defenders, he can make an impact right away. I think that's this is kind of a no-brainer pick for them if Okoro is still available. I know Chicago might go for him as well because they need that guy unless they trust Otto Porter Jr. But yeah, I would say Okoro is kind of the guy for Cleveland as well.
In Cleveland, obviously, they've been kind of a train wreck ever since LeBron's left, but I think Okoro would kind of put them in a different direction and move them a little bit forward, and hope to see Sexton and Garland each have a leap here. Atlanta, they can't play defense, but they do have some pieces that have massive draft, last year there. But who do you have Atlanta taking at 6?
I think this is one of the most tradable picks. I think Trae Young has reiterated 100 times this season that he wants to win, and he wants to win now. And I think the Hawks organization is going to take that into consideration when they're taking this pick. Whether it's a guy like an Obi Toppin who can come in and contribute right away, but doesn't necessarily fit the mold because you have a guy like Capella, you have a guy like John Collins. So position-wise, it doesn't necessarily fit. Or you go and you try to test the waters with a guy like Denny Avdija and you see if he can kind of match up and see if that's the type of player that you're looking for. Again, if they take this pick, I do think it'll be Denny. I think he's the hardest guy for me, in my opinion, to read in this draft. I don't necessarily have the best read on a guy like Avdija because I just don't know. He's so versatile that you don't know exactly what he can contribute on a team right away. And I think he's more of a project than anybody else is. But again, I'm so sold on the Hawks trading this pick that to me, it's kind of a no-brainer for them to move on and try to either move up in the draft or try to get some experience around Trae Young.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So Denny would be the pick at 6 for you, eh?
Yeah, that's him for me. But I'm so sold on them trading that it could be someone else entirely. How about you?
I think I would go Denny here as well. The only other player, and we've talked about this, I know you'll probably draft him more, I will, and he's a big question mark for me, is Patrick Williams out of Florida State. Because you think of Atlanta, yes, Trae Young wants to win now, but Patrick Williams, everybody talks. This guy oozes with potential. Yeah. And if they hit on that pick at 6 and everyone go, oh, maybe a bit early, he could be a superstar. And that's the only question is, do they go bold here and go Williams or Denny, or do they go someone who could come in and score right away, but maybe their potential isn't there as much? Atlanta could go, a few different directions here or there, but I really think I still think they're going to be a bottom feeder, man.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that, if they trade this pick, maybe for a guy like a Drew Holiday, who would be like the perfect guy to pair with Trae Young, If there's another year of a leap for John Collins, and if Capella could come in there and impact their interior defense a little bit more, if DeAndre Hunter takes a leap, if Cam Reddish takes a leap, there's a chance that they could be like the Hornets, an interesting, fun team that might be like a fringe playoff team. But again, yeah, it's most likely that they're still bottom feeders. They're going to be another lottery pick next season. All right, so this is probably one of the most interesting picks in the draft coming up. Mr. Detroit Pistons, the in my opinion, they are so lacking at the guard position that they need anybody that can come in there and kind of just lead the franchise. That's why I think if Detroit was in the top 3, they would have moved up to get LaMelo without a doubt in my mind. But they dropped so much. They were 7th, so it's kind of tough for them to go for that. And I don't know if they can package a guy like Blake Griffin and the 7th pick to maybe get the first over. I don't think the Timberwolves would want to do that, right? So I'm going to go Killian Hayes. Killian Hayes is my guy. That might be a shocker pick. I'm a big fan of Killian Hayes and what he did in the league, in EuroLeague last year. I think he's, in a lot of ways, he's one of the most intriguing prospects in the draft. He could be a superstar, but I think his floor is being a decent enough rotation player. And honestly, the Pistons need guys like that. Regardless, the Pistons are so desperate for some kind of guard to come in there and be their floor general, be their lieutenant. And I think Hayes, out of all guys, maybe Tyrese Halliburton too. I could totally see Halliburton going there, but I think Hayes is their guy.
And Hayes would be a great pick. And I actually had him number 2 on my big board. I think there's so much potential there. I think just playing in a men's league, there's so much you gain from that, playing against men. I think his IQ is off the board. There is question marks dribbling with his offhand. Right? He's really dependent on that left. So that's interesting. Good numbers, though. Right? 39% shooter from deep, has some great moves, great step back. I think there is a lot of potential there for him. Not to say to be a superstar, but to be, a couple-time all-star in this league. He's really talented, decent size, right? 6'5", 215. I like him. I like the pick. And you're right, Detroit needs a guard. Whether they move Blake Griffin eventually, that's going to be a question mark too.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's due quite a bit of money. But you're right, Derrick Rose is obviously not the answer there at the guard position.
No. And you brought up a really good point where he's kind of a little bit more older, experienced guy. I don't know what his exact age is, but he's had the experience of being around men. And I think in Detroit, out of all places where it's a super young team outside of Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose, that you kind of need someone that might take the young guys and have a little bit of maturity to them. But again, Killian Hayes seems like a guy who, you're right, could be a potential all-star, maybe a Manu Ginobili type with that left hand. I can see that happening.
Yeah, that's a good comparison there. New York, buddy, they have been a disaster for years. So this is a tough one for me because I think they could go 2 different ways. I think they might take the best player available, but they also need some help at the guard position. And for me, this guy could end up being the best player in the draft. Ooh. Tyrese Halliburton out of Iowa State.
Nice. Okay.
He is so fun. And,
by the way, we're 8 for 8.
Are we?
8 for 8, yeah.
Okay.
That's Halliburton's my guy, too. That's funny. Yeah.
And I know weird comparison here, but I know you love the hustle and the heart of Kyle Lowry. Yeah. He has that, dude. Like, he's bigger than Kyle Lowry, obviously a little bit leaner, but he is a pest. He's an annoyance on the court. He's such a good defender. His shooting form is a little, it's not really there for me, and maybe they'll fix that eventually, but still put up some really good numbers for even having that weird form. 65% true shooting percentage. 44% from deep, right? 16, 6, and 7 guy for Iowa State, right? Like, this guy can do it all. I love his game. A little bit, I believe he's a 2-year player for Iowa State, so a little bit older, but at this point, you're the Knicks. You got to figure something out, and I don't think they have any answers at the guard position, and I think he could help them out a ton, and I think he could help out R.J. Barrett quite a bit as well, and where they don't have to rely on Barrett to take all these hero shots.
Yeah, exactly.
I love Halliburton. I think New York would hit it if they made this pick.
I think, if New York was smart, they would take this pick. But I think because they're so pressured by their fan base to get some kind of superstar, that I actually wouldn't be surprised if they drafted Obi Toppin. and just said, this is the cornerstone of our franchise, although we have 5 power forwards who play the exact same playing style as Obi Toppin, they might go ahead and try to reach for him. But I agree with you. Halliburton is the pick. If you're a realistic franchise, you're taking Tyrese Halliburton with the 8th pick, because you're right. He can literally do everything on the court. He is one of the best, most smart facilitators in college last year. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize a lot is he does the intangible stuff. You mentioned Kyle Lowry. That's a perfect comparison, because he does all the things on the court that make him pesky, make him annoying. And that's the kind of guy Knicks fans will love. Realistically, I think Halliburton's a great pick, and I would also have him going to New York. But again, I would not be surprised if Obi Toppin gets picked by the Knicks.
And that was the thing. I said, it could go one or two ways, and that other way was Toppin, where I'm thinking, well, the Knicks wanted a guy who could dunk harder than anybody, who could jump through the roof last year in Zion. Didn't get him. What did Obi Toppin do in college? He dunked on everybody and won Player of the Year. So there could be that, where they go, oh, this guy's going to, sell all the seats at the Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Obviously, won't be selling a lot of seats this year. But you know what, Washington, let's move to 9. That's interesting, because you got to figure out John Wall's situation. Bradley Beal, I get it. He says he wants to stay in Washington. Why would you not want to leave, man?
Yeah, I know, man. It's a tough situation, and I think there's going to be a little bit of, I would say they're going to trust too much that John Wall and Bradley Beal are going to be the same John Wall and Bradley Beal that we knew a couple of years ago. They're going to rely on that a little bit too much. But regardless, outside of that, they have a really interesting prospect in Rui Hachimura. I don't think he's necessarily cornerstone worthy or franchise worthy, but I think he's a really good starter, maybe 5th guy type of thing that you can have. And to slot someone in beside him would be Obi Toppin. I think Toppin is a pretty decent pick for them. I think he would be an awesome vertical threat for John Wall and Bradley Beal to throw lobs to. They would be increasing. They'd have a ridiculous amount of highlight reels over the first season. I think Toppin is probably the most likely to win like a Rookie of the Year, but then not necessarily have the trajectory of some of these other players in the draft. He could come out and have an excellent career. I would say, though, I think he's one of the more ready players in this draft. I think he can come in and pretty much contribute if you want to. And if you're the Wizards, who were 10th place last year, 10th in the Eastern Conference, you're getting John Wall back. Bradley Beal takes another step. Rui takes another step. And now you have Toppin, who can come in and contribute right away. You might be able to slot in for a playoff spot. And at the end of the day, if you're trying to convince Bradley Beal to stay, if you're trying to convince that John Wall and Obi Toppin and Rui are the guys that you can kind of create a contender around, then you want to try to make the playoffs next season. And I think Toppin probably gives you the best chance at that.
I loved Toppin offensively, because we saw what he did in college, right? 20 points per game, and the efficiency is nuts. 70% true shooting percentage. Even for a big guy, he only made 1 3 a game, but still 40% clip. So he can shoot it too when you need him to. The defense is going to be a question mark. And this is a Washington team where their offense was really good and their defense wasn't so good. And I look back at one of the games because I wanted to see, who did Toppin face off against who was maybe NBA kind of material. This guy probably won't get drafted because he was a 4-year player, but Azubuike, tall guy, 7'1" from Kansas. If Toppin's going to be playing, an undersized center in this league, he's going to get killed by big guys, right? Whether it's Jokic, whether it's an Embiid, and a lot of guys can't handle those guys, especially in their rookie year. But Azubuike destroyed him. I think he was 12 for 15. He had 29 points. This is a guy who averaged like 15 points a game, right? So the defense isn't there. I would love to see Toppin go to a team that focuses a ton on defense and say, we're going to turn you into a terrific defender because we know what you can do on the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. And also, I think he'd be really good with a team that goes really fast because we know how athletic he is. Yeah. But Washington, you're in a situation, right? I think they would go best player available, and I think he would be the best player available for them.
So would you go Toppin as well? Are we still 9 for 9?
I think I'd have to. I wouldn't be ready to, and I don't know John Wall, depending on his situation, I don't think he'd be ready to give up the spot and be willing to mentor a guard right now because he is getting up there in age, but he still isn't, an older guy like, say, a Chris Paul age or anything like that, right? So I do think I would go Toppin at this point.
Okay. All right. Next pick is the Suns, and this is another pick which I think, kind of like the Hawks, is kind of bound to be traded, in my opinion. The Suns they went 8-0 in the bubble, although I wouldn't read too much into that. They think they have high hopes for the playoffs in the Western Conference next season, although the West is incredibly stacked. Where do you see them going with this, man?
It's tough because I actually like their team right now. We know Devin Booker can't really play defense, but he's a phenomenal scorer, right?
Yeah.
What are they going to do with Ricky Rubio? And that's a situation there as well, because I think he brought in sort of a leadership aspect to this team. DeAndre Ayton, I think he's going to grow a little bit as a defender, but we know what he can do. We saw what Mikal Bridges could do in the bubble. He's terrific. He's going to be a superstar in this league. And Cam Johnson, everyone was scratching their head when they made that pick, but he actually looked pretty good at times. So I think they're going to grab another player, and whether he comes on and ends up being sort of like a sixth man, kind of fits that player who can shoot the ball, who's long, and who can play defense. Sadiq Bey out of Villanova.
10 out of 10.
Love him, man. And 10 out of 10, that's crazy. So, obviously, great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Good numbers, right? 16 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. But the shooting, again, 61% true shooting percentage, 45% from three, and such a great defender, right? A good size, 6'8", right? 215. I think he'd be perfect for this team, right? And that's what Monty Williams would love is I think he has the youth aspect of this team where they just say, we're going to be gritty and we're going to annoy everybody. And they have players like that. I think Bey would fit in with this team and be a guy like that.
Yeah, I really like this pick for the Suns. I think the combination of him and Mikal Bridges trying to guard your best player every other possession would be incredible for them, especially because, like you said, Booker's, I guess, greatest weakness is his defense. So I think that would be someone who could kind of offset that. He seems like the type of guy who could come in and contribute right away as well. And I think if the Suns are trying to be playoff hopefuls, they need another rotation piece. And Sadiq Bey is that type of guy. He's exactly that type of player. Again, I just don't think the Suns keep this pick. I think they're eyeing Chris Paul, maybe a Drew Holiday or someone like that. But yeah, I think that's a great pick. We are 10 for 10 with this draft, which has to be like a record or something like that for being on the same wavelength here.
I know. And we didn't even really discuss – we discussed a few things here and there before.
Yeah.
I like this guy. What do you think about this guy? But it was nothing to this extent how accurate we are with each other right now.
Yeah. I do think we will break here with the Spurs pick, though. And I'm curious to see where you're at with this. But this is the guy who everybody has been talking about over the past couple of weeks. Everybody's reportedly trading up to get. I'm going to go with Patrick Williams, man. Okay. Patrick Williams ended up making my list. I know we talked about it earlier and we said he's probably out of the lottery for us, but I actually moved him up to the lottery because I started watching him. And the fact that he is about to be a lottery pick coming off the bench for FSU is freaking wild to me. And I think it's just because of the sheer athleticism that he has, the offensive potential that he has, and a lot of the great stuff that he does motor-wise and hustle-wise that make him potentially a good defender. I don't really have a comparison for him. When you watch him, you could be like, okay, is he like a Draymond Green type, or is he like more offensively talented than him? It's hard to read. He's probably, other than him and Denny, him and Denny are the two biggest question marks in this draft, in my opinion. But I think Patrick Williams is kind of a guy that just seems like a San Antonio type of guy. He seems like a San Antonio type of pick, and they need hustle. They need a guy who can kind of run the floor, and Pop is going to develop him into a good player. Maybe not a great player, but a really, really good player. I think Patrick Williams is the pick.
I think Pop would love a player like this, right? And we've heard phenomenal defender, freak athlete, can do so many things well. The one thing he can't really do well is shoot the ball. I mentioned this before, and I talked to a coach in the ACC. I said, who do you like, Vassell or Williams? Really short and sweet on Vassell. He just said, you got a game plan for him a little bit. Good player, can shoot it from anywhere. He was leaving so many messages about Williams.
Wow.
Oozing with talent, phenomenal defender. He annoys everybody, needs to improve his shooting, but his potential is sky high. And I'm like, this is a guy coming off the bench, right? So I thought that was really intriguing. And for me, I had him out of my lottery. I go, I guess I got to move him up because everybody's high on this guy. And you see what he can do in those short stints when he is getting on the court.
Yeah,
he would be perfect for a team like San Antonio because he's not a great offensive guy. They don't have to rely on him like that. I would just hate to see him go in a situation where they're trying to rely on him and go, he's going to be our Giannis. We're going to develop him, and he's going to end up being a superstar. And that's a lot of pressure on a kid like that, right? So I think if he goes to San Antonio, there's already a lot of players there, right? I think Lonnie Walker IV is going to turn into a pretty solid player. Keldon Johnson, the rookie last year, where's he going to end up?
Very good.
So I think there's a lot of youth in that locker room, and I think he would just help out all over the floor.
So was Williams your pick as well?
I don't think I would have gone Williams on this one, though.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
That's the only kind of difference. I think I would have gone I'm not going to spoil who I would have gone because maybe I'll use him for one of my next picks. But
okay. All right. Okay.
I don't think I would have gone Williams quite yet, even though I love his game.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Sacramento, good sir. They're also a team where it's just like, yikes. I have no idea what you guys are going to do. You have De'Aaron Fox as your franchise corner piece. Buddy Hield wants out. The trajectory for this team is kind of all over the place. Where do you see the Kings?
Yeah, again, Kings are really tough. Where did I have? I had team needs for them. I said shooting guard, small forward, and a center. Because you don't know what they're going to do with Bogdanovich. Buddy Hield, he's dying to play in Philadelphia. And I know I'm being biased, but you can see he comments on stuff saying, you got to trust the process and stuff. It's like, dude, you're not even playing for them. For me, I'm going to go a player who, I just kind of talked about a little bit, and I think this is the smartest direction there. I don't want to go a guard here because I love De'Aaron Fox. Nice. I'm going to go Devin Vassell out of Florida State. Right?
Wow. That's
Why? Is that what you had too?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. 6'7", 190. He can shoot the ball really well and an unreal team defender. And he's good at slashing too. He's not just a shooter, right? He can get inside, decent size, pretty efficient. My only thing is with that size, you can't really have him guarding big time, like a strong forward or a center. He'll get killed. Because he's a little bit leaner. But if you're putting him, I think he can guard 1 through 3 and pretty well at that point. But I don't know. For Sacramento, I could see them. This is a team where they have a lot of players and a lot of young guys. I wonder if they could end up doing a sign and trade with one of those players and moving up to get a more talented guy. But I like Vassell. I think he could end up being a contributing player on this team.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. They need some defense. This is a guy who's going to bring you some defense. He needs to develop his offensive game a little bit and potentially become a more of a shooting threat. But the Kings need some wings, like you said, especially if Bogey's gone. If Bogdan Bogdanovich ends up heading out, then, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer for them to pick a wing. I think Vassell is pretty much it's kind of like an easy pick for them, in my opinion. What are we at, New Orleans?
We have New Orleans, 13. Another weird one.
Yeah, it's also another weird one because it's like, what do they exactly need, right? They already have Jackson Hayes at center, who's a developing piece, even if they don't bring back Derek Favors. Brandon Ingram's probably going to re-sign. They have Zion. Lonzo is the centerpiece as well that they think so, but maybe they're done with the Lonzo project. Maybe they want another guard that they can slot in there. And I have another guard that they might want to slot in there. A guy who I actually posted on Twitter yesterday saying he was the Flash just because of how quick this guy is. And I think a team like the Pelicans will want to play quick, and he will be like the elite player to just slot in there and run. And the pace is just incredible on this guy. Kira Lewis Jr. I think he's, I'm not saying they don't trust Lonzo or Nickeil Alexander-Walker to develop, but I think Kira Lewis is a pretty damn good pick to have on the court with a guy like Zion Williamson if you're going to be running fast-paced, if you're going to be running all the time. If they decide to have a fast-paced team and just run people out of the gym, he is an awesome pick for them. His athleticism is there. His speed is there. He seems like a guy who can impact right away because of just the sheer athleticism that he has. He's been turning heads in workouts, and I think that's why he might slip into the lottery. Seems like a good pick for them.
I like him. I'm not as high on him as you are because I think there is some question marks. A little undersized, right? I think he's only 6'2". He's definitely not strong. He needs to build into that body quite a bit. So I think he'd be kind of tough on the defensive side of the ball. It helps if you have a guy like Lonzo, who is a good defender and can guard that, number one guard. I do like how you mentioned they could go fast because you are right. He reminds me a lot. I'm not going to say De'Aaron Fox, but I'll go a little bit throwback. He's been in the news recently, not for some great stuff, but how about Ty Lawson? Because I think Ty Lawson –
I could see that.
Really quick. And the only difference between them is Lawson could finish through contact quite a bit. Lewis, that scares me at moments because with his size, he ends up and then takes kind of a flailing shot, and it's not the greatest shot you'd want in the world. Whether that's because he's playing at not a great, basketball school at Alabama, and maybe he takes some smarter shots of some more talent elsewhere. I do like him. I think that fits well with New Orleans. I don't know if I would have taken him there because I think New Orleans has so many questions to answer.
Yeah,
but
especially with Holiday, right? If you're flipping
Yes.
Holiday, it's like a whole bunch of questions that you're just adding onto their roster.
Absolutely, but I do like him, and I think that would he be the number one ball handler? And what would you do with Lonzo at that point? Would you move him to the 2?
Yeah, no, I think it would be a shared role. I think they would kind of just go back and forth 1A, 1B in terms of ball handler, and then it would just be who could be a better spot up shooter between Lonzo and Kira. I think Lonzo has the mechanics to be a good spot up shooter, not a good pull up shooter. So maybe they'd want him to be a good spot up shooter and have him in the corner. Or is Kira going to be your spot up shooter? I don't know. But I think it's kind of, it's a decent enough risk for you to be like, we'll take a flyer on a guy.
Yeah, and no, it's not bad at all. I like that. If he's, the main ball handler, and Lonzo, we know he couldn't shoot in his rookie year. He came over to New Orleans, and he improved that quite a bit. So if he could be that spot-up guy, that would be interesting for them.
Yeah.
For me, Boston Celtics. This is your favorite team, right?
Yeah, you see all the green behind me, bro?
Yeah.
Come on, yeah.
This is tough, right? Because honestly, I think they could go best player available.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of questions to be answered on this team as well, because you hear them, are they going to move Gordon Hayward? Oh, they want to, move up into the lottery. Oh, they want to get Drew Holiday, and a lot of questions to answer. But for me, looking at my big board, there is some good players here that are guards. Do they go guard, right? Like they have Kemba Walker. I've seen some, mock trades around, and it seems like, whether Celtics fans are just willing to move Kemba.
Oh, yeah. They
sure.
they didn't really like their first year with him for some reason.
Okay, so that's interesting as well. I like Marcus Smart, and whether people are including him in trades, it's really tough to decide what to do. The center position is something that needs to be answered because Daniel Tice is all right, but there is moments in spurts where he looks awful, right? And his offense doesn't help at all. And then you come into Robert Williams, right? And he's a project, a good player, a good shot blocker, but again, the offense isn't really there. So for me, I am going to go best player available. And I think it adds some more shooting. And I'm going to go Aaron Nesmith out of Vanderbilt. No way.
Yeah. Actually, I swear to God.
I love it. And I would hate to face this guy, being a Sixers fan. But, dude, he's fantastic. 23 points per game. And the one question mark is not a passer. He's a score-first guy, but he can light it up efficiently. Defense, question marks here and there. And, again, Vanderbilt, Jerry Stackhouse is really trying to, fix that program there. They're not a good team, and he had to be the number one. So he did get tunnel vision a lot in moments and spurts where he just tries to do it all. But when he isn't, trying to be a hero, he's fantastic. 52% from 3, 4 makes a game.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's an incredible shooter.
And like I mentioned, 6'6", 215, good size. He's the prototypical NBA player you sort of want now, whether he can turn into that 3-and-D guy or be a bigger size 2. I just think if you're Boston, you want to load up on as many good players as possible to eventually start getting, all these players to move in trade packages. And I think this is a player that people would find intriguing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And it kind of helps them in one of their areas of concern last season too. Their bench was absolutely garbage when Hayward was out. Like when they didn't have Hayward in the playoffs, it was Semi Ojeleye and Brad. Sorry, there we go. Brad Wanamaker, and Romeo Langford, right? Guys like that who are trying to fill in. And I don't think any of those guys are really score first players at all, right? Nesmith, whatever you want to call him. He slots in perfectly as a guy who can be a bench baller. Just come into the game, score 10 points on demand whenever you want him to. He seems like a guy who can initiate offense if he wants to off the bench. They need that type of guy. As well as a center, they need a bench scorer. And I think Nesmith is kind of the perfect fit for them.
Yeah, I think, just him being a little bit bigger in a different position. I was thinking, maybe they need a backup guard here. But you mentioned Wanamaker. You mentioned Langford, who they took last year. Carson Edwards they took as well. So I didn't want to go an undersized guard like Tyrell Terry, who I really like. So I think Neesmith fits what Boston is doing. Now, we got a little bit more time left, but there's some players that would be left here, who are going out of the lottery. Who do you think is the best player available or a sleeper that could end up being maybe the steal of the draft?
Yeah, I think you already know who I'm going with here. I think you already know. My guy is Tyrese Maxey. I absolutely love this guy. I wish he was going to be going in the lottery, although I hope the Raptors end up trading up so that they could take him because I really, really like him. I think he's like the prototypical, he's that dog mentality, like you said, with Tyrese Halliburton. He has that same dog mentality. He has that same edge that Kyle Lowry carries with him, and I love that in a player. I think he has – the shooting is a concern, but I think it's a concern that he can kind of attack if put on the right team and put on the right development staff. Like, let's say a team like Miami drafts him, and Miami's development team is absolutely incredible. If they can try to work on his shot, he has the speed, he has the fire, he has the athleticism to be a really, really good NBA player. I could say Maxey could be the steal of this draft.
This is one player we talked about, right? And we said Kentucky always has these superstar players.
Every time. Yeah.
And for me, the only thing is that shot is horrific. And it's a push shot, and I hate push shots. I witnessed it firsthand with Markelle Fultz end up being a push shot, and he had to get out of Philly. I think it's going to be different because I think Maxey can do so many different things than Fultz. That just scares me, and that would worry me if you're counting on this guy to maybe be your number one or number two guy down the road. Obviously, if he's falling out of the lottery, he wouldn't necessarily be there.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily going to say it's a project because, again, high recruit, Kentucky. Coach Cal creates good players. So I think he could step in and be a quality guy. I hope he turns around that form. I really do.
Yeah.
For me, there's a few players on my best player available. I had Lewis Jr., who you selected. Yep. There's a few upperclassmen guys. Killian Tilly out of Gonzaga, another good player, and just injury concerns. Can't really play defense because he's not very athletic. He almost reminds you, not the passing ability, of Nikola Jokic, because he can shoot it from deep. He's a bit on the heavier side, but good moves underneath. Jalen Smith, good rim protector from Maryland. But for me, I'm going to go biased. I'm going to go Cole Anthony. A lot of question marks to be answered around Anthony. All right, about 6'2", 6'3". He was number one everything. Number one recruit, right? He was at McDonald's All-American. He was like the UA Hoops, superstar MVP, whatever it is. He won every award for a high school player, right? You're the son of an NBA player. Yeah. So for me, I think with Cole Anthony, and hearing this firsthand as well, is score first guard. He's not going to move the ball because, right, he wants to dominate the ball and shoot it over you or get past you, draw contact. He can't pass it when he needs to, but I think he is smart. And with that Carolina team, his numbers, efficiency didn't look great because that Carolina team sucked, right? They couldn't do much at all. Not many good players anywhere. Right, and they're basically doing two centers on that team, which is tough enough. So the paint gets clogged, and then Cole can't drive. So it's basically relying him on to shoot threes the whole time and bring them back. For me, I just think, again, a young guy. He was a superstar recruit. I think it's a little different than, say, a Shabazz Muhammad who came in, who was a number one recruit, and then, kind of falls in the draft a little bit. Because I think there is talent there that we saw in college at times. So I think he could be a steal in this draft. It just depends what team takes him, right?
Like I'm looking at it right now. Orlando has 15. They could always use more guards. Maybe Cole Anthony is the guy. I don't think Portland would go for him. I don't think Minnesota would go for him because there's a log jam there. I don't think Dallas would go for him either. Maybe Brooklyn. We could see Brooklyn, a Cole Anthony reunion. Not reunion, but you know what I mean. Maybe Miami. I doubt it. Philly. How about Philly?
That's what I was thinking, because I'm thinking a little bit, yes, I would love Tyrell Terry. I think he goes earlier than that. Undersized guard, can't really play defense, but can shoot it from all over the court. Ben Simmons being the primary ball handler and moving the ball and finding Cole Anthony cutting or just as a shooter, I think it would fit better than Josh Richardson. I know Richardson, he's a better defender, and he can shoot it at times. Oh, it's tough to watch at times, too, because he can't dribble. Yeah. So I think for me, yes, that would look good with Philadelphia, but I don't think he's going in the lottery. I'd be shocked if he did. But I think he's going to be in that range of 15 to 23. A lot of mocks have him going to Milwaukee, which would be interesting.
Also a very interesting pick, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think he's a player to keep an eye on. But dude, this draft is like 2013. It's going to be all over the place. There is a few people go, oh, this guy's going to go number one. This guy could go one. There's going to be some trades all over the board as well. It's going to be really fun.
I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be a couple second round guys where, you know, he's picked like 35th or 45th, and 2 years from now, 3 years from now, people are going to be kicking their butt thinking, oh my God, how did we miss that guy? How did we miss out on that guy? And I think this is that type of draft where everybody is all over the place. The range to which the players can go from a top 7 pick to a top 14 pick, or like you said, even with Cole Anthony, 15 to 23 is a pretty big range. You know what I mean? He's probably a 15 to 25 type of guy. I just think this draft is so out of nowhere, and it's underrated. I think this will be an underrated draft going into the future, especially when you look at the 2 drafts that are coming up. 2021 and 2022 are set to be like lifetime drafts, like the 03 draft or the 96 draft or the 84 draft. Like that's what 21 and 22 are supposed to be. So I'm excited for those drafts, but I think we're going to find a lot of gems from here as well. Anything else you want to say before we finish out on the draft pod?
Well, I was just going to say, and we didn't mention this though, is usually when March Madness comes around, a player kind of steps up and starts to dominate, like Kemba Walker, Steph Curry, and their draft stock rises. We didn't get to see that. So you are right. There is going to be maybe a second-year player who steps up and they go, okay, this guy has it, and he's dominant. A player, you know, we didn't mention him as well, Malachi Flynn. That was a good San Diego State team. Where were they going to end up? And there's a lot of question marks around him. Could he end up being, you know, a star player? We didn't get to see that guy showcase himself in March and dominate. So I think, again, like we mentioned, this draft is going to be all over the board. But we're already talking about a mock draft and this year's draft. You are right. 2021 is going to be fun.
It's going to be incredible. And Cade Cunningham is going to be the second coming of supposedly LeBron James. So we will see. We shall see. We have no idea. But listen, thank you everybody for watching the 2020 mock draft with Nolan and I. It was a pleasure, Nolan. We appreciate you. And maybe we'll see a lot of trades in a couple of days. Maybe we won't. We shall see. Have a good one, guys. Take care.